From Nigeria's financial capital, this is URI's Exchange. With me, Osinbajo. Let's get the new business and markets week started. The corporate Nigeria is in search of a new chief executive officer between now and the second quarter of 2023. Today, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the country's vice president or second in command to the incumbent president, Muhammadu Buhari, raises his hand as a contender to the office of the president in the 2023 general elections. But what is the vice president Osinbajo bringing to the table as Nigeria's new CEO if he is elected? Is the vice president Osinbajo a chip off the block of the current administration, whose socio-economic scorecard for the past 7 years is everything but sterling? Or will he be a new kid on the block with a new economic agenda in his back pocket? Joining me to discuss the statement, "Why I am running for president," by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, is URI's political editor, Sumner Sambo. A good evening to you, Sumner Sambo. This is Money and Politics. Let's get the show started. My first question, give me your first word on the Vice President Osinbajo's presidential declaration speech entitled, "Why I am running for president," quote and unquote.
Thank you so much, Bosin, and good evening to our viewers. This speech is one that is soothing to a lot of Nigerians, but doesn't have so much details as to what the vice president intends to do. Well, this is sort of an opening statement, if we may call it that way, as to what he intends to do, which is just to let Nigerians know that he has decided to throw his hat in the ring. And in this instance, we haven't seen so much as to how he intends to develop the country. There's a lot of pressure on any new person who will emerge as the country to give a blueprint, a very good blueprint as to how he or she will be able to bring Nigeria back from the brink. We've seen the APC trying to practice democratic socialism. That's the political party that he belongs to. It has focused more on welfarist policies, but a lot of persons will tell you that that is not the sort of policies that we need at this point in time, because we need a lot of investment, because this government has lost a lot of investments. Not just the government at the center, several subnational governments, at the state levels have been very docile in terms of getting foreign investments. And not only that, we have a lot of domestic investments that are not being boosted in several states, because a lot of domestic investors are afraid of putting their monies down due to the issues of insecurity, lack of clarity on policies, and all of that. Now, if we're having Vice President Yemi Osinbajo coming out to tell Nigerians that he's declaring, those are some of the things that people would expect. But I understand from the speechwriters that they wouldn't want to give out a lot right now, up until hopefully at the night when the APC will be holding a special national convention to elect its presidential candidate. That's when we may see such speech coming up.
Well, he spoke extensively. The first 6 paragraphs of the VP's speech were devoted to his work experience as the man with the boots on the ground across Nigeria, the empathetic listener, and a man of the people at the grassroots. That's what those paragraphs. He says he's been to villages, he's been with the youths, he's been with the security men on the ground who are fighting insurgency and others. So should that be considered a unique selling point of Mr. Vice President?
Bosin, that's not a unique selling point, because we've seen this before. Former President Goodluck Jonathan, don't forget, in 2011, that's what almost got him elected across the country when he had that favorable campaign speech, that he gave, that I have no shoes. I was able to go around the country, and I was able to make a lot out of my life because I didn't have any political godfather. My parents were not rich and all of that. All sort of sentiments like that. But I can tell you that is not what we need now. A lot of Nigerians know that being the vice president, he will move around the country. It's by the nature of his office and by the nature of the delegation of duties from his principal, President Muhammadu Buhari, for him to go around to meet with persons. And I can tell you that if you even read on social media, the criticisms that have followed that particular statement of his, a lot of people have said that he was going around majorly on condolence visits and all of that. And because the government couldn't contain the issues of insecurity. So even at a point when the president could not visit certain parts of the country, he had to be the fall guy, and President Buhari had to put him at the front to go around and do most of that. Yes, he visited factories. Yes, he visited schools and all of that, which are also a very good opportunity for him to be able to learn as to the true situation of the country, the conditions for entrepreneurs, manufacturers and all of that. But the idea is that after visiting all these places, going around, what so much did the government do?
He's correct. He's correct that he's the man with the boots on the ground. You can put it straight and give it to him that he's been have more boots on the ground than even Mr. President himself, instead of
I mean, that's not disputable.
He has more boots. The Vice President Osinbajo has more boots on the ground within the country, meeting businesses, small places, going to everywhere, than even Mr. President himself. But here we are. So he says, he's in his declaration speech, and I'm going to say this. He says, first, we must complete what we have started. Is it safe to say that, or translate that to mean, that the Osinbajo's presidency will be a continuation of President Buhari's 8 years in office?
And that's where his political struggles will start from, because a lot of Nigerians would want to hear some refreshing information as to what he intends to do, and not just saying that he intends to continue with some of the policies by this administration, because, I mean, we've had a lot of criticism against the country's policies, especially under the Buhari administration. While it sounds good politically to actually say that he would want to follow some of Buhari's policies, I think what a lot of Nigerians want to hear from him is, now that you want to be your own man, now that you want to be your own self, what exactly are you offering us that's going to be different? Because, I mean, well, we saw this government coming in with the change mantra, and all of a sudden the same government just fizzled out from talking about change and now moving on to the next level. Now, when you even ask officials of this government what the next level agenda of the government is, a lot of them don't even have a good grasp of what that agenda is. You have seen a lot of confusion in terms of policy management, in terms of trying to revive the economy, while the vice president has tried his best to present himself as being a little bit different in terms of policy makeup. But nonetheless, he would definitely be categorized alongside the Buhari administration. And so as it stands right now politically, yes, he was trying to pander to the interests of the Buhari administration, because he's still part of it. Trying to pander to the interests of the All Progressives Congress, because he's still part of it. But how many people can still beat their chest and say, this is the policy of the All Progressives Congress? Because it's unclear. A lot of those who are in government, including ministers, will tell you that even the economic policies are shaky. You can see that there was a late appointment of chief economic advisor to the president, and even when we eventually had one, Professor Doyin Salami, you can see that it looks like most of the recommendations of the government or of that economic team are not fully on ground. We saw Doyin Salami recently meeting with President Buhari, but what effect are we seeing on the economy? A lot of Nigerians will tell you that the economy is not so good. The fluctuation in the prices of commodities, I mean, is so much. The inflation rate is so much. Look at youth unemployment. A lot of persons actually expect so much on job creation by Vice President Yemi Osinbanjo, because that's the areas that a lot of people are putting hope on him if he's able to get the presidential ticket of the APC, that he seems to have some market-based understanding of how the economy works. But there's also a fear that he may be pandering to the taste of the Bretton Woods institution. So a lot of people want to test his ideas to find out how would his relationship be with the Bretton Woods institution, the IMF and all of that. Would he be able to push away the issue of subsidy? Would we be subsidizing petrol under him? Those are some of the things. What will happen to moribund national assets? What will happen to the economy? Will we be operating a mixed economy? I mean, these are the critical areas a lot of Nigerians are expecting to probe him, because if you listen to what former President Olusegun Obasanjo has said about President Muhammadu Buhari, he has stated it clearly that on the economy, Buhari won't be so good. On foreign affairs, Buhari won't be so good. But on the issues of security, Buhari will try his best. and even in terms of national unity.
Okay.
But, well, it's left for Nigerians to actually judge whether this government has done well in that aspect or not.
Well, our conversation on Nigeria's search for a new CEO in 2023 continues with some Sambo after this. Stand by, everyone. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, indicated in his presidential declaration speech today that he will continue what has been started, translated to mean the current socio-economic policies of the Buhari 7-year administration that is headed into its final months. But not a few Nigerians, think tanks and multilateral agencies have repeatedly called for a structural change of fundamental reforms in the Buhari's economic policies, cabinet members, and actions. Somna Sambo, Director of News and Arise Political Editor, is still here with me on this to discuss. Somna, I'm looking towards the Vice President's speech, and he says, he says, we will work tirelessly together, established by the grace of God, the Nigeria of our dreams in a few short years. And the next sentence says, we will build on the foundation laid by our predecessors, in plural. So, what is in that speech that gives you an idea of a new economic structure and direction for Nigeria if he is elected?
Thank you so much, Bosin. I think what Vice President Yemi Osinbanjo is trying to talk about is bringing an idea of economic nationalism that will help to, grow the economy. And that economic nationalism is one that will be fused into, creating jobs through the building of a tech economy. I mean, like, for example, he had said on that speech that he will make sure that the government, its agencies and regulators serve the business community, creating a tech economy that will provide jobs for millions of young Nigerians, enhancing our social investment program to a full-scale social welfare program and all of that. So there's a sort of economic nationalism when you see it. And this actually finds its root at the politics of, late Chief Obafemi Awolowo and Samuel Ladoke Akintola, who was also the premier of then Southwest, the Western region, as we used to call it in those days. Awolowo was a premier of the Western region, but he had to resign and go to the center to contest federal elections, and he handed over to Samuel Ladoke Akintola. And eventually, these two gentlemen played the politics, and the politics actually affected them eventually. Now, Samuel Ladoke Akintola, when he became premier, started seeing things from a different perspective, and he would want to play a politics that, the sort of politics that actually panders more to the taste of building an alliance with those from the north. And here you had an Awolowo who had been a former premier and was now in the center trying to build an alliance with the southern part of the country. And eventually there was a distrust between these two gentlemen and the kind of philosophy that should be guiding the Action Group political party as at then, and there was a division. And then you could see that Samuel Ladoke Akintola had to go his own way by forming a new political party called the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. And then you had Awolowo actually, building his own alliance with the southern part of the country. Now, in all of this, we could see that this eventually led to a distrust between these two gentlemen. Now, this is the sort of politics we are beginning to see again, where Bola Tinubu, who is the political godfather of Osinbanjo, is putting himself and presenting himself in the mode of democratic socialism, like Awolowo. And here we have Yemi Osinbanjo, who is trying to present himself to the business community as the best person to drive their ideas. We may have a clash of ideas in that perspective.
So do you think the Vice President Osinbajo is an establishment or an Abuja political bigwig, or someone who is capable or will be capable of looking the establishment straight in the face and say the real sustainable change is here?
Yes, he's presenting himself to the business community as a sort of Nigerian leader that would quickly move to ensure that the economy moves forward during his time, if he eventually gets the APC ticket and wins the presidential election, the one that the Western countries can easily work with, the one that can actually build a tech economy that's well, received by the younger generation. But the snag here is that he's also talking about mixing it with the issue of welfarism. And now, a lot of Nigerians are not so accommodating of the sort of welfarist policies that the APC seem to have put on the ground. Because a lot of persons are questioning if the welfarist policies of giving out conditional cash transfer, bringing out all the jeeps and all of that, and N-Power, whether those things have had a major effect on the economy. Some persons have criticized them as being drained pipes, because if more money had been put in the hands of investors, opening up big investments and creating a conducive environment, more jobs could have been created if we had opened up the economy more. But a lot of people say that the economy is shrinking, and instead of supporting manufacturers, what we are doing is carrying more monies and putting in the hands of people for doing nothing, all in the idea of promoting welfarism, social welfarism. But welfare states in these instances where our revenue is dwindling, according to many experts, is not what we need. Instead, we need to give more monies to people that will build more companies, build more manufacturing plants that will accommodate a lot of people and put more food on the table of people. That's more sustainable. But it's left to Nigerians to actually decide on what sort of government that they will need going forward, whether it's a social welfarist government or democratic welfarism or economic nationalism.
Well, to sum it up with you on this conversation, now because we have weeks and months ahead until the elections next year, and perhaps thereafter to continue this conversation about where money meets politics, because what Nigerians want now is all about it. I find quite a whole lot of points that Mr. Vice President spoke about in that particular speech. But as you said, he's a little bit short on details. For example, what further details would you like to hear from him? For example, he repeated the taking 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over a 10-year period. If you look at that particular statement, which he's taking straight from the mouth of his present boss, who will be retiring next June, President Muhammadu Buhari, what details would you like to see or to hear?
Well, let me start by saying this, Bosin. The opposition People's Democratic Party, if you listen to leaders from that party, especially someone like former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, you will hear him saying that if he gets power, what he's going to do right now is to ensure that most of the moribund facilities being maintained by the federal government will be sold off. The issue of subsidy will be addressed. The issue of infrastructure will be addressed. Now, these are some of the conversations we need to have. For example, as the federal government is about opening up the second Niger bridge, how do we intend to operate that facility? We are hearing of tolling now. Some people who live within that area will tell you that they don't want that project to be tolled because the federal government used its monies to actually put up that huge infrastructure. And as a result of that, they think that it's time for the federal government to give back to communities within that area. So tolling is not what they want. They would want to benefit to an extent from what the government has put on ground. So those are some of the things that we hope to have.
That's not free lunch. That's not free lunch, even in Freetown. You and I know that.
And that's why we need we will need the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo to begin to bring this sort of national conversation. If the PDP are saying that they'll provide those infrastructure without tolling, and the APC says it's providing those infrastructure and is tolling, how do they intend to do this now?
Who do you believe? Who would you believe? Who would you believe? Because the PDP could as well get there because it's easy to say so now and say do something else later. We've heard that before. Nigerians have heard that before. So who's the trust guy?
Yes, it's not for Nigerians to actually choose which one they want.
Who do you trust?
Well, the realities, the market realities for all of us right now has all shown us that government does not have a business in doing business. And if that's the case, then when public infrastructure are built, shouldn't it be enjoyed for some years before, tolling actually comes in? Because it's also people's money. Because the idea here is that the APC is confusing a lot of Nigerians. Now, you say you want to build a welfare state, welfarism and so on, and then you build infrastructure, and then you are tolling them. So there's a big difference there as to there needs to be a cohesion of the sort of ideology that APC wants to drive. Because the market-based realities, whether we like it or not, centers around telling people the truth. And the truth is that if you tell people before you got into power that subsidy is not real, then it means that you should remove it when you get into power. But how come you say subsidy is not real and then you get into power and then you sustain the subsidy? What sort of idea are you trying to push to Nigerians? This is what we saw with the Buhari administration. Instead of the Buhari administration following some of the guidelines that were put by World Bank and all of that, saying that within your first 3 months, try to remove this subsidy so that you have more monies to develop infrastructure and all of that. The government doesn't listen. The government goes ahead to keep subsidizing only for it to be crying that it doesn't have enough monies, it doesn't have enough revenues. Then who do you blame? Because the options are all available to you. So as the conversation begins ahead of 2023, leaders who want to come out to seek the presidency should be truthful to the people. They need to know at this point in time that there is no time for gimmicks. People have to be truthful to the electorate. If you're going to remove the subsidy, remove it. Not that you will use that to get to power and then you start complaining that you don't have funds when it is very clear to all Nigerians that subsidy is not so helpful. And you have to explain this to people in such a way that they understand, because when they don't see the infrastructure, they complain. But unfortunately, the money that should have been available for infrastructure, for rebuilding the military, rebuilding the police and all of that is being spent in the issues of subsidy.
Thank you so much for your time. Sabna Sambwa Rice, political editor. This conversation is not over yet.